In this video, you will learn what are computed and watched inside View and how you can use them to your own benefit. Hi, I am ekaterina from Monsterlessons Academy, where I am teaching you how to become a developer or improve your skills of being a developer in learning by doing way. And if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will link everything that I'm mentioning in the description box below. So let's jump right into it. So in previous video, we successfully configured our JSON server, and now we're using real data from API. Now the question is what is computed and watched and how we can use it. So the first question, let's just say that we want to create from the users new array. So in our case, users is the array of objects, like the array of real users. Let's say that we want to get from this users array the array of the names of the user. And the question is how we can do it at all. For example, my thought would be, if I don't know what is computed, to write this code inside mounted. So here we can simply write this user names equals, and we know that we're getting these users, and then we want to map, and we're getting user, and we can return just user.name. And we know that by default the array is empty. This is why we can simply move this code inside Axios, because we know that we are getting data here. Now we just simply need to create here user names, and this will be empty array. And now let's render here somewhere these user names. So let's check in browser. Here, as you can see, we're getting this data, and this is user 2, user 3, and 3 users that we created. So actually, this is exactly what we need. This is the array of names. The question is what happens if we need somehow to react to user change. What does it mean? In this case, yes, we have users once, and we're getting them here. But just imagine that we are, for example, inside our components users list. And as you remember, inside here we have users as a properties, which means we simply need somehow to react on the change of these users. We don't have here this Axios request, we don't know anything about from where we're getting data, but we want to react on the change. How we can do that? Exactly with the help of the computed. And it doesn't matter in what component you are using here, it is useful everywhere. So let's think what is computed properties at all. This is some property which is based or computed based on other properties. Which means, for example, we can say that we need to calculate user names based on the users. How we can do that? I will comment out our code from here because this is not the best place, and what we want to create here is computed. So this is additional property computed inside each component, and this is an object. What we have inside computed is a functions which are actually a properties. What does it mean? If we create here a function foo, this means that we are getting then foo computed property inside this. But in our case, we want to get usernames, and we're saying here that we want to return something. We can just simply return here empty array, and when we open the browser, we're getting the error duplicate key usernames. And this is actually a really nice error, because in this case, I created usernames already in data. And the point is that if you write usernames like a function inside computed, you don't need to write them then inside data, because they will be automatically created as a computed property. As you can see now, we have just here empty array and nothing else. And the point is that this is computed property, and in this case it is not based on anything. What we want to do is we want to move our code that we wrote here, this commented out code, here inside computed. And I will just paste it and uncomment, and we don't actually need to assign it because we simply need to return it. So what's happening here? We have a map for these users, and we are mapping it with username. Let's check in browser. This is exactly what it was previously. So here we have an array of our usernames, but it is completely different. Why? Because actually this is a computed property which is based on these users. This means every time when this user changes, our username's property will be recalculated. It is really nice inside shareable component, for example, user list, because you are getting data as a prop, which means you don't know when your parent wants to change this prop, but you want to react to changes in your parent. So in this case, computed property is really nice. The second point is that computed property is, first of all, declarative, and secondly, it is pure. What does it mean? First of all, here we are returning some data, like filter, map, whatever. We're just recalculating some stuff based on properties, which means actually it is pure, and normally we won't have some bugs here, because the code doesn't have side effects and it is easy to debug. The second point, that it is declarative. So if we write our code like at the beginning here in then it is imperative, which means we are exactly saying what needs to be happen, like we need when we are getting the response to assign usernames. In our case here, our code is declarative because we declare what needs to happen and how our properties need to react. So here we simply say, okay, if this user changes, we need to recalculate usernames. And this is really a nice way to define things in your code and react to the changes, because you actually want the whole application to be reactive. And computed properties is a nice solution inside Vue to do that. This is why I always prefer to use computed properties if it is possible, because in this case you simply have like 10 computed properties on your component and you simply render them inside template, and this is it. And they just reactively react on all our changes. The next question is, what is then watch? And watch is exactly the same like computed, but an opposite. What does it mean? So we can write here watch, and this is also a property inside Vue, and we can write here, but not the property that we want to achieve, but the property that we want to watch. In this case, we are watching users property. This is why here we have users function. And here we can write console log changed users. And now let's reload the page. As you can see, we are getting once changed users. Why is that? Because we are assigning here our users once. This means that watch actually is a callback of change. When we are changing users, we are coming in this callback. And actually this means that we can simply make the same thing like in computed, but inside watch. So we can say here this usernames equals this usernames map. And then we don't use computed at all, and here we simply create then usernames. And this is it. And actually this is super bad approach. Why? Because in this case everything is imperative, because watch is imperative and you says exactly what needs to happen. Your property will be just magically recalculated, but in this case you really need to define what needs to be happening when users were changed. So this is bad, and try to avoid using watch if you can solve your problems with computed, because then your code will be easier to support and debug later. So in this case, our thing with computed and creating a property is much better than using watch. But I think your next question would be when we need to use watch. Let's assume that we have, for example, pagination, and we have different pages inside pagination. So user clicks on page 7, for example, and in this case we want to refetch our data. So exactly like we did here on mounted, we did it once. If, for example, this component will be a pagination component, then we want to refetch our users list when we are changing the page. Because, for example, we have limit of set, we have only like 20 records per page, and this means that this code should be called on change. And we can't put it inside computed because computed properties are pure, but watch is exactly the place to do something like fetch an API, for example, when the property was changed. Which means we have a watch, for example, for property page, and then we are changing page because user clicked on it, and then we are doing fetch of our API. In this video, you learned what are watch and computed properties inside Vue. And the most important point is that computed is pure and declarative, and watch is imperative. This is why I always recommend you to use computed if it is possible, and only use watch if you need to do some action when some property is changing. And if View for Beginners course is too easy for you, you can always go and check my full View course where we're creating real application from start to the end, and it is going 10 hours. And I will link it down in the description box below, as well as all my other courses. And if you like this video and you want more content like this, don't forget to put thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you in my next video.